Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Co-Parent Diaries. I was away last week getting dental surgery done, and I tried so hard to record an episode before, but it was just flat out. If you see, I do still have a bit of bruising and swelling this side. I have put makeup on today because if you can see in the background, I've been doing a bunch of collabs, UGC videos, trying to close as much work as I can before Christmas, get that cash in ready for the house. Quick house update. So I am in the process of building my first home, which is so exciting. A beautiful home for me and my girls. It's something that I've obviously dreamed about for years and years and years. And at the age of 36, I'm like, I don't know, I feel so behind. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that. I feel so behind because I don't own my own home. I've never owned my own home, but I have moved a lot in the last 10 to 12 years, and that's actually what I'm going to talk about in this episode. But the house is finalised, the land is finalised. They've just given me an update on the land settlement date, which will probably be June next year, which is great because I still need about 60 grand to pull this off. The house in total is 800,000 to build, and managing a deposit mortgage house on your own as a single person, oh my god, it is a lot. And I'm on an okay salary, but I still need to have my freelance business on the side, so that is ticking away. The house is organized. I'll probably do a whole episode on that situation, but today's episode was a request, and it was a request to talk about my journey from moving to the UK to Australia. It's something I haven't spoken about in a really long time. I think probably because I moved over here with my ex to start this beautiful new life together, and we did have some amazing years here. So much fun, so much adventure, and obviously the last 2 years have just been really difficult, so it's probably not something I've spoken on in a while, but here we go. I'm going to give you the lowdown of how we ended up moving from the UK to Australia, and I guess sort of the situation that we're in now. So it was back in 2013 when we decided to move out here. We were 23, so me and my ex have been together since we were 21. We got together on his 21st birthday, which was 2010, and the New Year of 2013, so like the end of 2013, I actually booked and paid for us to spend New Year's in Sydney, for both of us to come to Australia together. First time, big trip. We'd had a really shit New Year the year before with his friends, and it was just awful. And I said, right, next year we're going to have a great New Year. And I got this I think I got a £3,000 bonus at work because I was in sales. And I went straight to the travel agent and I booked us Sydney for New Year, Harbour Bridge, fireworks. But I also booked 4 days in Perth because I actually had family here in Perth. My granddad's brother moved out here in the 60s as a £10 pom and brought his wife and his kids here, and they settled here in Perth. And I've always known about them. There was a little bit of like beef, I think, with my family with their move, but it was sort of on my nan's side. I never met my granddad. He passed away sadly before I was even born, so it was all sort of through my nan. My nan was pretty bitter about it, but I love my nan to pieces, so we just went with it. But yeah, I wanted to come out. I wanted to meet them. They shared the same name as me, and so we organised it, and they said absolutely, come stay with us. So we did. We came out here on Boxing Day 2012, and we spent 4 days here in Perth with my family, and it was the best 4 days we ever had. We were just amazed by this country. We were amazed by my family's hospitality. Their house was beautiful, up like overlooking the city, up in the hills, and they were just incredible. And then New Year's Eve the day before New Year's Eve we flew to Sydney. And we spent 2 weeks in Sydney. We actually wish we'd spent 2 weeks in Perth because we weren't massive fans of Sydney, if we're really honest. We felt like it was just a bit of a hot London. But it was exciting nonetheless. We had a great time. We came back. That was January 2013. And then I think it was May, around about May, June maybe. My family actually messaged me and said, hey, we've just opened a cafe and, you know, we're looking for a manager. Do you want to come out on a working holiday visa and, you know, manage the cafe with family members? And I was like, fuck yeah, I do. Like, yeah, I do. And I remember ringing my ex and I said to him, hey, do you want to move to Australia? Like, do you want to go to Australia? And all we'd been doing is talking about Australia since we got back. And both of us had had this dream of moving to Australia when we were kids. And so we were just like, yeah, what do we do? And to be honest, the rest was a bit of a blur because it was that long ago. But I remember we applied for our working holiday visa. It wasn't that expensive. We saved up as much money as we possibly could. It wasn't a lot. But both of us were like, we were living at my mum's house. We were in jobs that we didn't love. Like, it was what it was. We had no commitments, no ties, no back. We had no kids, like nothing. And we were like, yeah, let's go out on a year's working holiday visa. And so we did. September 2013, we moved to Australia. And I started working in my family's business. My ex-husband got a job within a week at a local golf course, which up until a few weeks ago he still worked at. So he's worked there that whole time, and we started our life here, and it was incredible. I then moved on a working holiday visa. You can only work for someone for a maximum of 6 months. So towards the end of the 6 months, I applied for a 457 visa, which is a skilled working visa. I don't think they do them anymore, but it was like the most popular visa that Brits got to come work here. So my family helped me get a 457 to be able to continue working at their restaurant cafe. Things started to go a little bit downhill though. Without going into too much detail, family started showing its true colours and it just wasn't vibing with me. There was a bit of violence with the person that I was working with, and it just was not cool. So I decided to go and find another job. And I did. I managed to find another job in the city working in marketing and events for an advertising agency, and they took over my visa. So they took over my 457 visa. Obviously blew up with the family, haven't spoken to them since. They cut me off. They got really nasty, which like they did invest some money in, but they also just weren't aware of like just how rude and nasty they were. Some of them were absolute beautiful angels, but yeah, the other side not so much. Anyway, I got a job in the city, and my ex was able to be my de facto on my visa. So I was the visa holder, which meant I was tied to a job. He wasn't tied to any job whatsoever. He could literally do whatever he wanted to do. But he loved working at the golf course and pretty much, yeah, as I said, had worked there up until a few weeks ago. So yeah, I got that job, and then a few years on a 457, we wanted to go for PR. And I asked my employer, hey, is there any chance that you could sponsor me on a permanent residency visa so I could be here longer? They were like, yes, absolutely. And so we got that process in place. That took about 18 months to come through. And that was probably one of the most stressful, up until then, one of the most stressful times of our lives. Like having someone else to like decide whether you get to live in this country or not based off a few pieces of paper was just wild. And it was funny because we had a couple of hiccups with my ex and his criminal record, which he has not got a criminal record, but when he was like 14, 15, maybe even 16, he took a padlock off a shop. Like if you're in the UK, you know, the shutters that come down on corner shops. He took a padlock off it and then just put it in the bin, but he was arrested for stealing. Obviously not charged, but that came up in his record. And we had to basically like get this statement written about what happened and why it was on there. But yeah, that was a difficult time. And also at the time, I then just really started to hate my job. Also, the job that I was in, they started to make redundancies, and I was so fearful and so worried that my publication was going to get axed and I was going to get redundancy. So yeah, it was a really difficult time. PR then came in, and it came in while I was I pregnant? I think I was pregnant with Parker at the time. And it came in, and it was like this huge relief, like, oh my goodness, okay, permanent residency is in, we can finally live here forever. This is so awesome. And then I went on to maternity leave, which here is not very well paid. But I also then started my own business at that time because I couldn't afford to really take maternity leave because of the pay. And yeah, we started life here. I ended up leaving that job after a year. So with the permanent residency visa, you have to be employed with that person for a certain amount of time when the PR visa kicks in. So you can't just get your visa and piss off, basically. I believe it's a year. It could be 2. I can't quite remember. But I did my time and I left because that place was becoming toxic. I found out that I was paid less as a female than I was my male counterparts, even though I'd been in the job longer and I made more money than them in commission and sales. But they were paid 10 grand more than me. And I remember asking when I was about to come back from maternity leave, I said, I'll return from maternity leave if you'll pay me the same amount that you're paying the men, the guys. So I think it was like 50... I think I was on 50,000, maybe 55,000, and the boys were on 60 or 65. And I remember saying to my boss, like, why are they paid so much more than I am? And he turned around and said to me, because we can't advertise the job at that low rate because we get poor quality. And I was like, okay, well, can I be paid the same? And he was like, oh, no, we don't have the money in the budget. Which I was like, okay, yeah, fair. And then like my friend got a pay rise there, and I just thought, yeah, this is a joke. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. So they wouldn't pay me the same amount as my male counterparts. So I decided I'll go out alone and I'll work for myself. And pretty much that was 2018. And since 2018, worked for myself and up until this year. But in 2019, we decided to leave Australia and go back to the UK. Now, this is where it sort of gets a little bit complicated and a little bit difficult. We'd just had our first daughter, and we'd gone back for a holiday when she was about 3 months old, I think. And we had obviously had the best time, and we showed all the family her, and she was like the first grandchild in my side of the family, and it was so nice, and it was great to have this space and someone to look after her, so me and my ex could go out for dinner and go to the football and like just have some us time, because in Australia we had nobody to look after her. Actually, a correction, I thought I didn't have anyone to look after her. Looking back now, I had so many people, I just was too afraid to ask. And I remember saying to my ex, like, I want to go back to the UK. I don't want to be here. I want to go back to the UK. And he didn't put up a fight. He agreed. And I thought that that's what he wanted too. And I just went with it. I thought, yeah, he wants that too. He wants to be closer to family. Now we've got our daughter. Like, we'd always had one foot in the UK and one foot in Australia. We could never settle. We could never work out what we wanted to do. This never really felt like home. For me, I can't speak for him. But anyway, it turns out he never, ever, ever wanted to leave. which I didn't find out until a few years into being in the UK. And ultimately, I think that was one of the big cracks in our relationship after that. I think he resented me a lot for moving us back to the UK. And after that, just sort of this resentment festered into him leaving me once we got back here. But we went back to the UK. I thought it was what he wanted. I thought it was what I wanted. We actually ended up finding out we were pregnant with our second, with Bella, like a week or two before we left, which was wild. And that was difficult for me because I didn't want to have another child at that time. It wasn't the right time. So we went back to the UK and we had to just start life again. We thought we'd just live with my mum for a year. I can't remember if we sort of like thought, oh, we'll just be back for a year or so and then we'll go back to Australia, or whether we thought we were going back for good. If I'm completely honest, my brain started to block out a lot of that part of my life now, which I am realising was because I was in quite a deep depression and I was in major fight or flight mode. So actually between 2019 and probably this year, I don't remember a lot. My brain has hidden a lot of it from me and we're just like unpicking it now. But we moved back. We're going to live with my mum, and about a week or two of being back, my mum said she'd sold the house and she was moving 3 hours down south. So then like the stress started. He had to find a job. I had to make my business work. We had to find a rental, which was hard because we didn't have a salary. We were both of us were self-employed. We managed to find this dingy flat, which was just covered in mold. Anyway, I could go on and on. For 3 years, we were back in the UK and we were miserable, really miserable. And with my ex-husband, I remember specifically, gosh, I'm going to get emotional now. I remember, let me get a tissue. Oh. Right, let's try that again. So I remember we were sitting in our flat. I was heavily pregnant and I had Parker next to me on the sofa. We'd like squidged all our furniture into this one room. It was so tiny. And he was sat on my chair, on my desk chair, and we were looking at our superannuation and whether we could get our superannuation from the UK, from Australia to the UK. And I remember looking at him and it's like the light had gone. The light had disappeared behind his eyes. The brightness had gone. It was like someone had turned on the dim switch. And I remember looking at him. So we'd probably been back 4 or 5 months, I think, because it was winter. And I remember thinking, we've made a massive mistake leaving Australia. Massive mistake. And I remember thinking, fuck, what have I done? And there was nothing we could really do at the time. I was heavily pregnant. We just moved back and I thought maybe we'll just stay until the baby comes and then maybe we'll go back to Australia. Maybe we can just go back. Like, he can get his job back. We know we've got lots of friends. You know, we could go back. It will be no problem. It was not easy for us. We also moved back thinking that we would have loads of help and support with the child, and we could almost get our relationship back where we could go out and have fun. But we realised that actually we probably had more support in Australia than we had in the UK, and that was causing a lot of regret and a lot of tension too. Bella arrived in October 2019. And we all then know what happened in 2020. Sort of February, March 2020, the world started to shut down. COVID happened, borders closed, all of that stuff. We moved from this mouldy flat to a house next door to my nan, which was absolutely a blessing looking back now, because I was able to see my nan every day and keep her mentally well and fit. I hate to think what might have happened had she not had someone there. You know, we'd pop our head over the fence. We had a gap in the fence where we'd say hello. We did create a little bubble with my nan. But anyway, we couldn't get back to Australia because they would let residents back in. But Bella was not a resident. She was born in the UK. So we had our daughter Parker, who was a citizen, an Australian citizen. We had me and him, who were Australian residents. And we had Bella, who was not. They were not giving any visas at the time. And also, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a little hotel room. Now, I couldn't even imagine how difficult that would have been with a 2-year-old and a baby. So we decided to wait a little bit and just, you know, try and make things work. Probably a little bit into COVID, my mum's husband got really sick. We knew he was sick anyway. He had pulmonary fibrosis, which is a lung condition, and he'd caught COVID. He caught COVID actually 3 times, I think, which deteriorated his lungs massively, and it wasn't looking too good. And we had to make a decision. I think it was the start of 2012. So towards the end of 2011, start of 2012, we knew our visa was going to expire. So we had to be back into Australia by the 4th of May, 2022. Oh, can't really remember too much with the dates, but we had to be back in Australia by one of those days. When did we get here? 23? No, 20. Can't remember. Doesn't matter, brain hurts. We sat and we spoke, and I made the decision. I said, I can't leave my mum, because we also knew if we went back to Australia, because we'd been out for so long, we wouldn't be allowed to leave for at least a year. We had to remain in the country for at least a year. There was lots of things, but basically I knew if we went back to Australia, I wasn't allowed to leave should anything happen to my mum's husband. And I just said, I can't leave right now. This is just not what I can do. He ended up having a double lung transplant, and it got really quite ugly at one stage. And I am grateful that I didn't go at that time. But once he was, you know, he got a double lung transplant, which is incredible, and he's doing really well now. And once he was out, so that would have been May 2022, I think. We then sat down, well, actually, it was August 2022. We were in the pub. We'd left the kids with his mum, because we'd actually moved back in with his mum in his family home, because financially we were just really struggling. And we sat down and I said, I hate it here. And he said, me too. I said, I can't see us ever buying a house and being able to afford to live in this country. And he said, and that's when he said, I never wanted to be back here. I always wanted to live in Australia. I want to go back. And I said, okay, well, let's see if we can do it. Our visas had been cancelled by then, so we were no longer residents, but Parker was still a citizen. And I remember sitting there, it was nearly midnight, and I emailed our visa agent and I said to her, we want to come back to Australia. Can you tell us if it's possible? And she emailed back nearly straight away, and she said, yeah, it is. There's a loophole right now that if you claim you got stuck out of the country due to COVID, they could reinstate your visas. And so I said, right, how do we do it? How do we go for it? So that was August. I started the process. We paid the money. It was a lot of money again. And we were advised not to do Bella's visa until we were onshore. So until we were in the country, we were advised not to do her visa, because her visa could take a long time. And by the time her visa came in, it was basically like the timings just didn't work. Anyway, it was the start of October 2022. We were away on our like yearly holiday in the New Forest, and I got an email to say that our visas had come in. We've been issued permanent residency again, and we had exactly a year from that date to get back into the country. But once we were in the country, we were not allowed to leave for at least 12 months to prove that we were serious about coming back. We basically managed to get it back because we explained the situation with my mum's husband, the situation with COVID, having a baby. My ex managed to get his old job back. They wrote him reference letters. We got a few friends to write us some letters to say, you know, how much we were missed and how much we were part of the community. And yeah, so we managed to get it back. And I remember being so excited. And then it was just a case of like, when do we go? When do we get back? And then everything just sort of aligned. We wanted to get back for Christmas, but that was going to be too hard. We decided to have one more Christmas in the UK. And then it was a case of just looking at flights. And January and February were too expensive to fly back to Australia because it was the summer holidays here. And we had 4 of us. And so we decided on March. And it also happened that, so the house that I'm in right now, I rent off a really good friend of mine. And they were literally in the process of moving out of this house into a new house they'd bought, and they're about to rent this one out. So we managed to tie, what we wanted to do was tie in with them because they said, do you just want to rent this house from us? And we were like, yes, absolutely. We had no idea there was a rental crisis in Perth at the time and how difficult it was going to be to get a rental. So we're so grateful that that just aligned. Anyway, we planned it, and I think we got here like middle of March 2023. We moved back. Life was, we had to start our life again. And we had all our friends, and we went back to the soccer club, and he got his job back, and I was still running my own business. My business was ticking over pretty well by then, so I was able to have the kids still and work. We got the kids into a local school. We started the process of Bella's visa, which was the most painful and stressful process of, again, before separation, our lives. That was a lot more difficult than we thought to get her visa, which put a lot of stress on us. But we were back, was it March? April, May, June, July, August, no, we were back 7 months, and then my ex left me. And then he turned around and said that he just didn't love me anymore and hadn't done for a couple of years, and thought that getting back to Australia was going to fix things, but it hadn't. And, then the journey of becoming a single mum and a co-parent began. So it's been a real whirlwind. And it does get difficult to speak about. Sometimes, because when I reflect and look back, I can see so many things that I just missed. And there's a small bit of regret of going back and leaving our life here in Australia, because it was fucking perfect before we left. I just thought I needed to be back in the UK to be closer to the family. Now we had a child, and I just didn't do what was best for us. I was trying to do, and have always tried to do, what's best for everybody else. I do regret going back, but then at the same time, had we not gone back, we probably wouldn't have realised how much we didn't want to live in the UK and how absolutely screwed the country was compared to this country. So I guess there's a blessing there. We both know we never want to go back to the UK. Even when we split, I did think, oh God, how am I going to survive here as a single mum? Like, I need my family. But I was like, I don't. I can make it work here. This is what's best for us. We both know we never want to go back to the UK. Australia is our home. I will do my citizenship test in 2027 so I can become a citizen. Bella will then automatically become a citizen with me, and we can join Parker as citizens, which will be great, which means we've got just that, I don't know, we can just live here, and I don't have to worry about renewing a visa every 4 or 5 years. I guess the fact that we were able to be back there meant that our kids could have a relationship with their grandparents for a few years before we came back. Had we not, they would have probably not met Bella at least until she was 2 or 3, which is wild. They would have missed out on some really big things. So I guess at the same time as I feel some regret going back, there is some gratitude there as well. And yeah, I know I never want to live back in the UK. I know that Australia is my home. I know this is where I want to stay. This is where I want to live. This is where I want to build a life. It is hard being away from family, especially now it's coming up to Christmas. This is where I struggle the most. I struggle around birthdays. I struggle around Christmas. It is a little, and obviously now we're separated. It really is a little bit different. But over time, we'll create these new traditions and this new flow and this new life, and we'll build our network. You know, I lost a lot of my life here in Australia when we separated because we built this life together here. We were known together by everybody. All of our friends were together friends, except for his work friends, who were just his work friends. I didn't have work friends because I worked for myself. And so I think I am still rebuilding my life, I think, here. I know where I want to live. I know what I want to do. I've got those core friendships now that I've built over the last 2 years since separating. And now it's just a case of like really getting some roots here, really getting some safety and security here, in the sense of like having property, having you know, a place to call home. Me and my ex-husband moved house 11 times in 13 years, I think. Every year we'd move. We've had some real problems with houses here in Australia, with break-ins and just bad places to live. But I think we're in a good place now where we know where we want to live, we know what we want to do. And yeah, so that is our journey of moving and living in Australia. This is home. This is our kids' home. When they get older, I'm sure they'll want to travel if they're anything like me, which is why I want to have citizenship, because if either of my children decide they want to go back to the UK for a few years, you bet I'm going with them. And yeah, that's that one really. Didn't expect to get emotional, but there you go. It's still, this podcast is so healing for me. But yeah, thank you to the person who requested this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it.